Hello friends, in this section we are going to continue our discussion of endocrine physiology. So we are going to discuss the physiology of thyroid gland, mainly the follicular part which secrete T3 and T4. Okay, calcitonin will be discussed in calcium metabolism. So some general points about thyroid gland. We all know there is one thyroid gland which is present in the neck, and two important points that we need to remember about the development of thyroid gland. That's the development of thyroid gland starts at third week, and hormone synthesis it starts at 11th week. Okay, another important point about thyroid gland is that it's derived from endoderm, okay, from the endoderm of primitive pharynx. But there's a part of thyroid gland which is called as parafollicular cells. Parafollicular cells are also called as C cells. They are derived from neural crest. These are neural crest derivatives. Others are derived from endoderm of primitive pharynx. Okay, now let's try to understand the structure and hormone synthesis in the thyroid gland. Okay, so if we talk about thyroid gland, if we cut a section through the thyroid gland, we'll be able to see two different parts. So these circular structures that can be seen, these are called as thyroid follicles. These are called as thyroid follicles. As you can see, these are called as thyroid follicles. There are lot of follicles. Okay, and okay, for convenience we are going to just show three follicles. In between these follicles is present connective tissue which is called as stroma. Okay, so this connective tissue is called as stroma, and there are certain cells present between these follicles. These are called as parafollicular or C cells. Now these thyroid follicles, they contain follicular epithelial cells. So these cells are follicular epithelial cells. And in the center there is this lumen of thyroid follicle which contains a material called as colloid. So this is called as colloid. This material in the center is called as colloid. These are follicular epithelial cells. So these are cells. This is called as colloid. Again, this is colloid. Okay, now these follicular epithelial cells, so these cells here are follicular epithelial cells. These cells are responsible for the synthesis of thyroid hormones as T3 and T4. These are responsible for synthesis of thyroid hormones. These are parafollicular C cells in the stroma. These produce hormone called as calcitonin. Calcitonin has role in calcium metabolism and will be discussed separately. Okay, now this material in the center is called as colloid, and this colloid, it mainly performs two functions. It has precursor molecules for hormone synthesis, and it helps in storage of hormones, storage of T3 and T4. Okay, so storage of thyroid hormones is done in this colloid. That means these hormones are generally stored for 2 to 3 months. So if hormone synthesis stops, there will be no hypothyroidism for 2 to 3 months, because there will be enough hormones stored in the colloid of the thyroid gland. So this gives us general idea about different hormones produced by thyroid gland. So there are mainly three hormones: T3, T4 and calcitonin, and here we will discuss T3 and T4, which is produced in the thyroid follicles by follicular epithelial cells. Okay, now let's try to magnify this follicle and see how this synthesis takes place. Let us say this is a thyroid follicle. So these are follicular epithelial cells, and the synthesis of thyroid hormones takes place in these follicular epithelial cells, and from these follicular epithelial cells, these hormones, they are stored in the colloid. So hormones remain stored in the colloid. Okay, so this is a follicular epithelial cell. This is a follicular epithelial cell. Now this surface is called as basolateral surface. Basolateral surface. This is in contact with blood. Okay, wherever you see basolateral surface, it means that's in contact with blood, and there will be definitely a sodium potassium pump. The other surface, that means this surface, is called as the apical surface. Apical surface, which is in contact with colloid. Okay, here. Now if we magnify the same image here, this is a, so you can understand this is the round structure called as thyroid follicle, and this is one follicular epithelial cell. So the synthesis of thyroid hormones takes place in the thyroid follicles, and the initial stimulus is by thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is secreted by the anterior pituitary, and it binds to its receptors, thyroid stimulating hormone receptors, which are present again on the basolateral surface. Now there are some other material, there are other substances which can stimulate these receptors, such as steroids and dopamine. They can also stimulate the synthesis of thyroid hormones. And another important point that we should know is that this TSH is not completely, it's not necessary for the synthesis of thyroid hormones. Without thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroid hormone synthesis can take place. That means if there is hypopituitarism, so there will be no TSH, but hypothyroidism will not be seen. So hypothyroidism is not a component of hypopituitarism. We mainly focus on growth hormone deficiency and FSH-LH deficiency. They are not thyroid hormone deficiency, because these hormones can be synthesized without TSH as well. So steroids, dopamine, they can stimulate same receptor. Now this is a stimulatory type of G protein coupled receptor. It will cause intracellular activation of certain proteins, etc. So there will be increase in cyclic AMP, other things, and eventually there will be activation of this channel, which is called as sodium iodide symporter, and this will start the basic main process of synthesis of thyroid hormone. So the first step, so there will be activation of this channel. Actually this channel will be activated. This is called as sodium iodide symporter. Now through this channel, iodide ions will be taken from blood. So this is the basolateral side, so this will be in contact with blood. Okay, basolateral side. So from blood, iodide ions will be taken into the follicular cell. So this is iodide ion. Now this is step 1 in the thyroid hormone synthesis, is called, and it's called as iodide trapping. So first step is called as iodide trapping, as you can see. Now after this step, so the important transporter required for this is sodium iodide symporter, and this can be inhibited by certain drugs such as perchlorates, thiocyanates, and nitrates. Now another step, after these iodide ions enter in, these cross the apical membrane through another transporter and reach in the colloid. Okay, so these are iodide ions, and this transporter is called as iodide chloride antiporter, also called as pendrin. So this is called as pendrin or iodide chloride antiporter. Okay, that means it transports iodide ions into the colloid and chloride ions out of the colloid into the follicular epithelial cell. Now there's a condition. Now this transporter pendrin, it's not just present in the thyroid, it's present in thyroid as well as in the inner ear, also in the inner ear. Okay, and if there is defect in this, then it's called as Pendred syndrome. Pendred syndrome. So in Pendred syndrome, there will be problem in thyroid, there will be hypothyroidism, that means goiter, and there will be problem of inner ear, so there will be sensorineural hearing loss as well. Okay, just a clinical point. Now once these iodide ions reach into the colloid, so now these iodide ions are here. Okay, iodide ions. Now there will be another step. So this is step number 2. So this was step number 1. This step number 2 means transfer of iodide ions across the apical membrane. Transfer across apical membrane. Now after this, there will be organification of, it means from this iodide ions there will be formation of iodine. Okay, this is called as organification, and for this certain enzymes are required which are present in the apical in the membrane of this cell on from the apical side. This is called as thyroid peroxidase, TPO. So this enzyme present on the apical surface converts this iodide ion into iodine. This is step number 3, which is called as organification. So this is step number 3 called as organification. Now, okay, first iodide ions they enter, this is called as iodide trapping, then these go across the apical membrane, then there will be organification. After organification, now this part here, so this is the colloid, okay, as you can see this part here is the colloid. In colloid, precursor molecules are present which are called as thyroglobulin. So this is a molecule called as thyroglobulin. And this thyroglobulin has tyrosine residues. So after this, there's going to be iodination of tyrosine residues of thyroglobulin, and this results in the formation of two molecules. Okay, there can either be single iodination or double iodination. So there will be formation of a thyroglobulin molecule having two iodines attached to it. This is called as diiodotyrosine, and there will be formation of another molecule having just one iodine. So this is a thyroglobulin molecule and just one iodine is attached to it. This is called as monoiodotyrosine. So diiodotyrosine and monoiodotyrosine are two molecules which are formed. Okay, this process is called as iodination. This is step number 4 called as iodination. So let's write it here. Step number 4, iodination. Okay, iodination. Again here the enzyme required is TPO, same enzyme that's present here. Okay, now after this there will be coupling. Now this diiodotyrosine and monoiodotyrosine, there is coupling between two, and if two units of diiodotyrosine combine, then there will be formation of, okay, I'm going to show it here, there will be formation of T3. If diiodotyrosine and monoiodotyrosine combine, there will be formation of T3. There will be formation of T4 if diiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine combine. So this is diiodotyrosine plus monoiodotyrosine. This is di plus di. So T3 and T4 will be formed. But these T3 and T4 are still attached to these thyroglobulin precursors. Okay, now they remain stored in the colloid as such. These are present, these are formed, and they are present in the colloid. Now this is step number 5, and this is called as coupling. Okay, this is step number 5, which is called as coupling. Now after coupling, when these molecules are actually needed by our body, then at that time these T3 and T4 are released. Okay, so the last step, that is step number 6, is the release of T3 and T4. So how are these hormones released? Once these hormones are formed from colloid, okay, I'm going to show it here. Okay, this is the follicular cell. Now these T3 and T4 are present here along with thyroglobulin. From colloid they diffuse back into the follicular epithelial cell, and here in the follicular epithelial cell, enzyme protease acts on this, and it causes release of T3, T4, and thyroglobulin will also be released, which will diffuse back into the colloid for recirculation. It will be recirculated back for recycling, and T3 and T4 they'll go into the bloodstream. So T3 and T4 will enter into the bloodstream, T4 and T3, and in the bloodstream the main hormone is T3. That means all the T4 will be converted to T3 by enzyme deiodinase, because wherever this thyroid hormone acts, the receptors they actually bind to T3. That means all the T4 is converted to T3 by this enzyme deiodinase. Okay, so this is the whole process of synthesis and release of thyroid hormones. Now another important point that we should know, sometimes this diiodotyrosine and monoiodotyrosine they can combine, and together they can form another molecule called as reverse T3. Reverse T3, this is physiologically insignificant because it's formed in very less amounts. Insignificant. Okay, so this is the whole process of formation of thyroid hormones and their release. Now let's try to understand the mechanism of action of thyroid hormones. Okay, So mechanism, as we all discussed in the general hormones lecture, that thyroid hormone T3 and T4, these hormones have nuclear receptors. These have nuclear receptors. That means they are group 1 hormones and they have type 1 receptors. Okay, that means nuclear receptors. Now, so this is a diagram. Here it shows these are thyroid receptors. This is one thyroid receptor, this is another thyroid receptor. Okay, so this is thyroid receptor, and when hormone is not present, so here this is inactivated form. These are present as dimeric units. So this one thyroid hormone receptor, another thyroid hormone receptor, and a molecule is bound to it which is called as co-repressor. So this molecule is co-repressor. Okay, this is called as co-repressor. Now thyroid hormone receptor is an example of heterodimeric receptor. So what is meant by heterodimeric receptor? It means in active form, this thyroid hormone receptor, it actually combines with receptor of a different kind. In this case, it combines with retinoic acid receptor. Okay, retinoic acid receptor. So this forms a heterodimeric molecule. Okay, so this is in absence of hormone, so a co-repressor is bound to this receptor and this results in inactivation of receptor. Okay, inactivation of receptor. Now whenever thyroid hormone comes, let's say this is the thyroid hormone, so once it comes and binds to this receptor, there will be dimerization of this receptor with another receptor called as retinoic acid receptor, RXR, and the co-repressor molecule will leave and it will be bound to another molecule called as co-activator. So this here is called as co-activator and co-repressor is gonna leave. Once this hormone binds, co-repressor leaves and co-activator binds to this thyroid hormone. This is thyroid hormone receptor. It's a dimeric receptor because it's bound to retinoic acid receptor. Now this receptor, it stimulates this part of the DNA which is called as thyroid responsive element. So there will be stimulation of thyroid responsive element, there will be transcription, there will be translation, and this will result in formation of proteins, and these proteins will be responsible for physiological functions. So let's take a look at this. So mechanism of action, T3 and T4 are nuclear receptors. So and the receptor is heterodimeric receptor. That means in inactive form they are homodimeric receptors. So thyroid receptor. There are two thyroid receptors bound to a co-repressor, and the receptor is in inactive state. Once thyroid hormone comes and binds to its receptor, it will dimerize with a different type of receptor, in this case retinoic acid receptor. Therefore it's a heterodimeric receptor, and the co-repressor molecule will leave and another molecule co-activator will bind. When this will bind, this will cause stimulation of thyroid responsive element which is a part of DNA, and that will cause transcription of this particular segment and translation. So specific proteins will be synthesized which will produce physiological effects of thyroid hormone. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action. Now let's try to understand the actions of thyroid hormones. So whenever we talk about thyroid hormones, the first thing that comes to our mind is BMR. That means thyroid hormones help in maintenance of basal metabolic rate. So the first action of thyroid hormone is on the glucose or carbohydrate metabolism. So carbohydrate metabolism. On carbohydrate metabolism, thyroid hormones, these increase gluconeogenesis and decrease glucose uptake by the tissues. That means overall there will be increase in glucose levels. Okay, there will be increase in glucose levels. Now this is the reason why in case of myxedema coma, a myxedema coma is a serious condition of hypothyroidism, extreme hypothyroidism. So there will be hypoglycemia, because thyroid hormones, they normally increase glucose levels, and in myxedema coma there is severe hypothyroidism. There will be hypoglycemia. Okay, this is easily understood. Now another important action is on the protein metabolism. So thyroid hormones, they increase basal metabolic rate. It means they'll cause more proteolysis. That means when more proteins are broken, that means there will be negative nitrogen balance. Okay, negative nitrogen balance. Proteins are broken in muscles, so if there is more thyroid hormones, more proteins will be broken in muscles, which can result in myopathy. There will be destruction of osteoid of bone, which can cause osteopenia, and simultaneously there will be release of calcium, so that will cause hypercalcemia and even calciuria, and so there will be proteolysis, there will be myopathy, osteopenia, hypercalcemia, calciuria, etc. Okay, so this is about protein metabolism. About fat metabolism, the thing that we need to remember is lipid metabolism. Again, thyroid hormones, they increase lipolysis and they increase cholesterol clearance. That means if there will be hypothyroidism, in hypothyroidism the levels of cholesterol will be high. Okay? Levels of cholesterol will be high in hypothyroidism, because thyroid hormones, they increase lipolysis, they also increase cholesterol clearance. Okay, now point number 4 is about the effect of these hormones on the bones. Okay, this thyroid hormones, they cause bone growth, and in the central nervous system these cause myelination of neurons. Another important action of thyroid hormones is regarding heart. Okay, now in the heart, thyroid hormones sensitize the heart to actions of catecholamines. So this is an indirect stimulation of heart. Okay, that means in case of hyperthyroidism there will be palpitations, there will be increased heart rate, tachycardia, etc. Okay, so this is understood. Point number 7 is regarding oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, now thyroid hormones, they act as uncouplers of oxidative phosphorylation, because of which there will be less ATP production and more increased heat production. Okay, so this will result in what's called as thermogenesis. So this is the reason why a patient of hyperthyroidism will be intolerant to heat. Okay, heat intolerant. And why a patient of hypothyroidism will be intolerant to cold. Okay, this is the reason. Another important action is regarding oxygen consumption. Thyroid hormones, since they increase basal metabolic rate, they increase oxygen consumption by all the tissues except brain and testes. Okay, so these are two organs where oxygen consumption is not increased. So these are actions of thyroid hormones. First, they increase basal metabolic rate, so carbohydrate metabolism increase, gluconeogenesis decrease, glucose uptake, glucose levels increase. That's why in case of myxedema, that's a severe form of hypothyroidism, there will be hypoglycemia. Okay, in protein metabolism, these thyroid hormones, they increase proteolysis, so there will be negative nitrogen balance, and loss of protein from muscle can cause myopathy. There can be loss of protein from bone, osteopenia, and this will release calcium, hypercalcemia, calciuria. Okay, In the lipid metabolism, there will be more lipolysis and increased cholesterol clearance. That's why in hypothyroidism, the cholesterol levels are increased. Okay. In case of bones, thyroid hormones cause bone growth. In brain or CNS, these cause myelination of neurons. That which is the reason why if there is congenital deficiency of thyroid hormones, that can cause cretinism. Okay, cretinism, which is characterized by mental retardation. So mental retardation will be seen in this case. In case of heart, there's an indirect effect seen. So they sensitize heart to action of catecholamines. That will be, means there will be stimulatory effect. Okay, stimulatory effect will be seen. So in hyperthyroidism, palpitations, increased heart rate is seen. In oxidative phosphorylation, these act as uncouplers. That means less ATP will be formed and this energy will go towards heat production. So there will be more thermogenesis. That means more thyroid hormones, there will be more thermogenesis, more heat production. So the person will be heat intolerant. And in hypothyroidism, the person will be intolerant to cold. They also increase oxygen consumption. So whenever oxygen consumption, it increases in all the parts of body, all the tissues except brain and testes. Okay. Now let's discuss this another important topic that's called as thyroid function test. Okay. Thyroid function test. In thyroid function test, okay, T3 levels, T4 levels, and TSH levels are measured. Okay, T3, T4, and TSH levels are measured. Now, T3 and T4, these are available in free form as well as in bound form. Okay, in bound form, these are bound to three main plasma proteins. They are bound to thyroid binding globulin. Almost 70% is bound to thyroid binding globulin. They are bound to albumin, almost 20%, and transthyretin, 10%. Okay, so these hormones, they can either be in free form or they can be in bound form, but the significant one is the level in the free form, because the hormone which is present in bound form, this will not produce any effect. So no effect will be seen because of this bound hormone. All the effect will be because of free hormone. That means in thyroid function test, we need to measure the levels of free T3 and T4. So free T3 and T4 levels are measured plus TSH levels are measured, because these T3 and T4, whenever they are produced, they will cause feedback inhibition of TSH levels. So TSH levels will also be measured. So now in the thyroid function test, let's consider a scenario. Okay, so this is T3, T4, TSH, and this is interpretation. Okay, so let us discuss first case. If T3 is normal, T4 is normal, this is actually free T3 and free T4, and TSH is increased, it's increased. So what's the interpretation? See, clearly if free T3 and T4 levels are normal, then TSH levels are also normal. Okay, but if T3 and T4 levels are decreased, that means there will be manifestations of hypothyroidism and there will be less feedback inhibition of TSH, so TSH will be increased. Now in this case, free T3 and free T4 are normal. That means the patient does not show symptoms of hypothyroidism, but TSH is less. But TSH is more. More TSH means there is less feedback inhibition. So the person has hypothyroidism, but there are no clinical manifestations. Okay, so this is called as subclinical hypothyroidism. Subclinical hypothyroidism. Okay, now another case, point number 2, if free T3 levels, these are less, free T4 levels are also less, and TSH levels are more, that means the person clearly has hypothyroidism. So there is less T3, less T4, and because of less feedback inhibition of TSH secretion, there will be more TSH. Another point that we can get from this is that there is no problem in the anterior pituitary, it's producing TSH normally, but the problem is with the thyroid gland. So it's a case of primary hypothyroidism. Primary hypothyroidism. Okay, primary hypothyroidism. Now another case, there will be less T3, less T4, and less TSH. It means the reason why T3 and T4 are less is because there is less stimulation by TSH. Okay, so in this case there is a problem with anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary is producing less TSH, so less T3 and less T4 are formed. So this is the case of secondary hypothyroidism. Secondary hypothyroidism. Okay, now point number 4, there will be more T3, there will be more T4, and because of feedback inhibition there will be less TSH. More T3, more T4, less TSH. So this condition is called as thyrotoxicosis or hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism. Okay. Hyperthyroidism. So this is about thyroid function test. Now in the next section we'll discuss different disorders associated with thyroid gland. So this is all about the thyroid hormone. I hope you understood the lecture well, and if there are any queries, any questions, you can write down in the comment section. Thank you.